Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Electric Avenue's YouTube updates. Thank you for joining me. We are doing the new releases here for Friday, November 8th, 2024. We made it through election season in the US in quite one of the most tumultuous election seasons I think we've ever had. I can't imagine one that will be more tumultuous. Such as it is, I'm going to show you the new releases for the week. For some of you, this may be therapy. All right. So I always start with the big stuff. Holiday season's approaching. I worry about Thanksgiving dinners and how those are going to go. Uh, anyway, first big release of the week. I'm starting actually, I usually start with the box sets. And so this week I thought it would be good to start with the big and beautiful and colorful box set from the Talking Heads. This is Talking Heads 77, their first album. This is done in a deluxe edition mega box here. It's not too bad for the four records, about 150 bucks. There's also 7-inch singles in here. So this is the first album is remastered. A second album of rarities that includes B-sides, alternate versions, acoustic versions, and then there's 2 LPs of a live concert. Would be their last at CBGB's in New York, October of 1977. So to promote this album in their hometown. And then there are some 7-inches, 4 of them. Love, Uh-Oh, Psycho Killer, and Pulled Up. And so it's a really cool box. Let's see. It's the first time reissues of the 7-inch singles with rare picture sleeves. Includes an 80-page hardbound book with rare and previously unreleased photos and new liner notes from all of the band members and recording engineer Ed Stasium. So it's the definitive version of this, according to Rhino. They're the ones who put that out. Also, if you're interested and you don't want to bite on something quite so big, there's a 2 LP edition of it, and this features the album and then the rarities record that's in there. So you don't get the live show, you don't get the 7 inches, but still pretty cool. So Talking Heads 77, the birth of, an iconic band. Amazing legacy that they have still. The other sort of deluxe box expanded thing this week. We have, gotta grab one of these here, Miles Davis. And this is the Miles in France bootleg series box number 8 in the series. This is released by Columbia. 8 LPs of revelatory live material from the birth of Miles' second great quintet, featuring George Coleman, Wayne Shorter, Herbie Hancock, Ron Carter, and Tony Williams. So this is the vinyl box. 8 LPs. This one runs in the $220 range. This features, 4. There's a 4 in there's Paris Jazz Festival. And then 3 at the Mondial du Jazz. I don't know how to say that, but very nice. This kind of cut out front too. I won't have lots of either of those box sets in stock. So if you want one and you don't happen to see it, let me know. The Miles, there's also a nice little CD box for that. So you can get all of the recordings that way. That runs more in the $80 range. And then there's also the 2 LP. This is the last 2 records in the box set. And so you get the Paris Festival concert. And this is kind of cool. They pressed it on France colored, what do they call it? French flag vinyl? Yeah, French flag vinyl. These are from 1963 and 64. So this is sort of quintessential Miles before he started getting a little more out there, but it does feature things like My Funny Valentine, a 12-minute version of that, 16 minutes of All of You, 11 minutes of Stella by Starlight, 13 minutes of Autumn Leaves, 13 minutes of No Blues, a few other things. So very nice. And I don't think that that's been released before. I don't know. Maybe bootlegs, like they said, bootleg series. Another reissue this week already of a reissue, Charlie XCX. And this is the expanded version of her Brat album, but not the remix album. The remix album is out on CD now, or is also available as part of this 2 cassette set. And that has remixes of every song from the album, many with different lyrics or different music. And then this is the expanded version of the original album. So this is Brad, and it's the same, but there's 3 more songs, so it's not. It's got 3 more bonus songs. This is the white vinyl edition, I believe, and also one of the songs is her duet with Billie Eilish, Guess. But I think actually this version is the version without Billie Eilish. Guess the remix version has Billie Eilish on it, so hence we're still waiting for that on vinyl. There's so many different versions of some of these albums, and like that's one that really went sort of mega meta and has lots of different versions. A couple more jazz reissues this week of note. I think these complete the Blue Note Blue Vinyl Edition series. Grant Green's Idle Moments on blue vinyl, and Herbie Hancock's Maiden Voyage on blue vinyl. These all come with these cool little, like, looking like what Japan would do, these obi strips. And for the 85th anniversary of Blue Note, these were only done for indie stores, and these things are going to be collectible one day because, you know, they're on blue vinyl, and there's not much Blue Note on blue vinyl up until this series. So if you're going to do it, these are both classics, by the way. I mean, both of them, they did a really good job. Blue Note did a really good job in picking which albums that they were going to do that with. They didn't pick things that were so random that you wouldn't know what they were. But they also picked ones that I would have said, that's an iconic record. So good choices. I enjoy this band, and it's been a while since they had a record out, 8 years. Primal Scream and the album Come Ahead. I don't know who's really in this band much now. I think Andrew Ennis still plays a little guitar, and Bobby Gillespie is the main guy, and it's pretty much, you know, Bobby's show at this point. But this album was produced by David Holmes, who did a lot of soundtrack work. He's worked with them before, but he also did like the Ocean's 11 movies and stuff like that. So it's got kind of a groovy, funky sound this time. So new Primal Scream. And they're a band that have been sort of operational under the name Primal Scream since the late 80s. So been a while. A new Pineapple Thief EP. And this is a K-Scope Records. It's part of Steven Wilson's label. And this album's or EP is called Last to Run. It's a 5-track green vinyl EP of previously unreleased recordings from the It Leads to This sessions. There's a track called Election Day. Features Gavin Harrison on drums. And there is a CD for that as well. And then there's also a new album from Pete Yorn, and he's still doing his thing, singer-songwriter, called The Hard Way. This is on black, white, and gray marble blend vinyl. 8 tracks. Um, Pete goes back to what, mid 90s, I think. That was sort of his breakout era. Um, he gets talked about in like the circles with like everyone from Jeff Buckley to Ryan Adams to, you know, well, he probably doesn't necessarily want to be associated with Ryan Adams. I don't know. Mount Joy, a new live record from them. This is live at the Salt Shed, Chicago, Illinois. We just got a new live Lumineers record, and now we get a live Mount Joy record. So all these bands are kind of giving their fans a little bit of what they want, a little taste of their live music to take home with them. And this is 3 LPs recorded over 4 sold-out nights at the famed Chicago venue to celebrate New Year's 2024. So recent too, live at the Salt Shed. Okay, another live record, kind of a legacy record, Whitney Houston. And this is an album called The Concert for a New South Africa, Durban. I think I remember when this happened, and I don't know if they broadcast the whole thing at the time, but parts of it came out. This is the 30th anniversary celebration on vinyl for the first time. Includes her live version of I Will Always Love You and the unreleased song Love Is. She also does Love's in Need of Love Today, So Emotional, Love Will Save the Day, Saving All My Love for You, I Want to Dance with Somebody, How Will I Know, Queen of the Night, I Have Nothing, I'm Every Woman, and Greatest Love of All. So it's kind of like a live greatest hits record. God, it looks so hot in Africa. She's already sweating a little bit in that photo. She sweat a lot on stage, though. I don't know how much of it was the actual heat and how much were other substances. Spyro and a new record from them. This is remastered, celebrating 50 years of Spyro. Includes new song, 50/50, plus Shaker Song and Morning Dance. Double LP on gold and purple vinyl. 12-inch page booklet and liner notes called Jubilee. This is 50 years. I don't know. The picture is of them in a live setting, so I don't know really if this is live or studio. Kind of hard to say. But it does say there's a new song, 50/50. I'm assuming it's live or they wouldn't have a picture like that. Doesn't necessarily say they're licensed recordings. So anyway, if you're a fan of this band, they don't put out records every day anymore, so it's kind of interesting to see that come along. We got some more reissues here. Rat, Out of the Cellar. Someone commented, hey, they changed the color. Yeah, they did. This is a lenticular sleeve too, so when you turn it, it turns to the color. See, there it is. Okay, so it depends on which way you have it, if it's blue or yellow. This is the first album from Rat. Includes Round and Round and Wanted Man. Also, there's a neon orange 7-inch vinyl with the unreleased track Reach for the Sky from the 1983 Out of the Cellar sessions in here. And very big album from the early 80s. Another album that sort of has its place in history, Hallowed Ground by the Violent Femmes. This is, I can't remember which album number this is for them. Sophomore, that's right. This was the second. Features country death song, Jesus Walking on the Water, I Hear the Rain, Never Tell, and more. Lacquers cut from the original stereo tapes. Violent Femmes. I mean, when you have an album as big as their debut, there's nowhere to go but down. I think many times you're fortunate if you can hang on to that. So that first album was so iconic, but This does feature Tony Trischka on banjo too, on a little bit. John Zorn is mentioned. Yeah, Violent Femmes. And then Tonic. If you're a 90s person, Tonic, this is what, the second or third? I'm trying to remember. Sugar is the name of the album. I think this was maybe the second. Featuring the singles You Wanted More and Knock Down Walls. Some music on vinyl pressing. That record label. It's a pretty big seller. Their first album was like pretty massive, so it's always going to be tough to get as big as that, but this one sold quite a bit too. So maybe that was the third. I can't remember. Sometimes it's been so long. I mean, you go 30, 35 years back. That was about probably 30 years. Buffalo Tom, another reissue of a great album. Big Red Letter Day was the name of this one. This was is reissued on Beggar's Banquet, features Soda Jerk. I'm Allowed, Treehouse, Would Not Be Denied. I don't know why the original date's not printed on this. I mean, give me some information. No sticker or anything. But Buffalo Tom, this is a great album, very popular indie, sort of indie rock album. British indie rock record that was also sort of popular in the 90s, Charlatans, UK, with Up to Our Hips. And this is a reissue, repressing of this with different cover art. The original had like, I think it had like a girl kind of turned looking towards the camera. This is the 30th anniversary expanded edition of this album. Let's see, features Jesus Hairdo, Up to Our Hips. I think this has a bunch of extra tracks. This features, yeah, it looks like 7 or 8 bonus tracks at least on this. Sort of a deluxe edition of that. Cassius, and this is a best of for them. Cassius was a electronic duo, 1996 to 2019. I say electronic. They also had a fair amount of like funk and kind of soul stuff in the mix, but featuring the songs Toop Toop, Rock Number 1, Cassius 1999, Feeling for You, La Mouche, Sound of Violence, a couple of tracks with Cat Power, Go Up and Action, and also The Missing with Ryan Tedder. I think one of the band members died from like some kind of an accident. I don't remember if they fell from a balcony or something like that. But one of them passed away a few years ago, and so there probably will be no more Cassius material. So this is sort of a we're rounding things up, sort of, and put that in its place in history. Another great record from the early 2000s, maybe 2004, 07, When It Falls. This is an album that was a follow-up to a really big album. I think the first one was like Simple Things or whatever. That was a great sort of soul electronic album. Kind of reminded me a little bit of like Air's Moon Safari, but a little less artsy and more conventional and more soul. And then this album sort of continues that a little bit. But Sia, who went on to major solo success, sings on this album a bit, just as she did on the first record. I think she sang on their first like 3 or 4 records, and then she'd already had a couple of solo albums too, so she started doing her solo career and 07, and then I don't know if they were based out of Australia, maybe. I think so. I don't know. Maybe not. She was Australian and then moved to London, I think. So that might have been where she met those guys. But anyway, 07, one of those bands that's like always had cool music, but you'd be hard pressed to go like down the street and go, oh, that's the guy from 07. Like, you know, unless you live next door to him, you probably wouldn't know who they were. But Nick Lowe, a reissue of his one of his, if not his biggest seller, I think, Labor of Lust. This is Nick from the late 70s. Combines UK and US track listings and a rare bonus track featuring Cruel to Be Kind on green vinyl. Cruel to Be Kind ended up being Nick's really biggest solo hit from '79. The other thing is that he wrote What's So Funny About Peace, Love, and Understanding for Elvis Costello. So Costello, most of his stuff is original stuff, but that song was a pretty big hit for him, thanks to Nick Lowe's writing. So, and they worked together quite a bit off and on over the years. A couple more reissues. Ben Webster, jazz. This is At the Renaissance, featuring Jimmy Rolls, Jim Hall, Red Mitchell, and Frank Butler. And this is on Contemporary Records Acoustic Sound Series, so we know it was mastered by Bernie Grunman at QRP. Nice Ben Webster jazz record. Originally 1989, so a little bit later when this came out. But yeah, Ben is a great sax player. Johnny Hartman and a Verve. This is a Verve by Request series. I just dropped by to say hello. Really great jazz singer. This features Hank Jones on piano, Illinois Jacquet on tenor sax, Kenny Burrell and Jim Hall on guitars, Milt Hinton on bass, and Elvin Jones on drums. It's a lot of top-notch people, but jazzy and singery. So Johnny Hartman, he did a really great album with was it John Coltrane, I believe, among other. That's not the only thing he did. Bruce Hack, the Electric Lucifer. Bruce Hack, this store we're in the west of Philly suburbs, Chester County, and I had customers in the past that knew Bruce Hack personally or had some sort of personal connection to him. I'm not sure if he was from this area or somewhere else, somewhere in the Northeast though, but Bruce was an interesting guy who did a lot of experimenting with electronic music early on, built a lot of his own instruments and things, and this is the Electric Lucifer, a limited edition Heaven and Hell vinyl. So it's on blue and red, and it says a psychedelic electronic masterpiece from 1970, and the first time it was on a color vinyl edition. Bruce was supposed to be an interesting guy. This is from his estate. It was originally released in 1970 on Columbia Records, so it has had pretty widespread release. Another former Columbia record that keeps getting reissued. Oh yes, we got to talk Christmas. Mariah Carey, her big Christmas album featuring All I Want for Christmas Is You on a picture disc. So you can put it on your turntable and watch her spinning around. Just spinning and spinning. This does feature, All I Want for Christmas Is You. Like, you can't turn on the radio and hear that, but somebody's going to want to see Mariah spinning on their turntable. Another Christmas record from the Judds, a reissue. This is the Judds Christmas Time. This is the Winter Wonderland color vinyl edition, featuring the hits Beautiful Star of Bethlehem, Silent Night, Silver Bells, Winter Wonderland. I can't look at pictures of the Judds anymore and not think of how tragic Naomi Judd's suicide was. Just, she looks so happy, but feels like it's hiding so much pain somehow. Maybe that's something for a therapist. Hey, Johnny Winter, About Blues, a Johnny Winter reissue on blue vinyl. Early Texas blues recordings from Grammy winner and Blues Hall of Fame inductee. Johnny Winter was one of Rolling Stone's 100 greatest artists of all time. There you go. Uh, Great guitarists. I say artists, 100 great guitarists of all time. And we've got some more reissues. The Chambers Brothers Now. If you like sort of late 60s, early 70s, sort of, I want to say, soul music with a kind of a civil rights edge, I think the Chambers Brothers would be good for you. This is recorded live at the Unicorn in Boston and the Ash Grove in Los Angeles, 1967. Talks about how they got their start in churches and went on from there. Time Has Come Today was what their biggest hit, I think, or one of their biggest. We get some reissues from metal stuff. This is on the RSD Essentials series, Wormrot, and I'm trying to remember the name of this record, but this is 34 punishing grindcore tracks on coffee splatter vinyl. It features the unused recordings, the Wormrot Decepti Split. I don't know if I said that right. 2008 Dead EP, two Dead EPs and a demo. So there you go. If you're into that sort of thing. Also, we have a Morbid Angel Altars of Madness reissue. So if you're into metal, you might be thinking of that. And Entombed. And this is Clandestine. That's the name of that album. And indie exclusive Deep Purple edition. It's like Earache Records reissues. Is that Earache also? Yeah, they're all on Earache originally. Okay. Well, that kind of does it for the new releases. CD wise, I don't think there was really much to show. Everything is sort of represented on vinyl too. The one thing I could say is that Keith Jarrett, The Old Country, with Gary Peacock and Paul Motion, more from the Deerhead Inn, got a CD reissue. So quickly for my recommends this week, try and keep this a little briefer. I've talked about this band before. One of my favorite albums of theirs was called The Color of Spring, and it came out before this one, and I feel like, God, I just need to recommend this because it's music that will kind of, well, some people say it's soothing. I don't think it's necessarily soothing. I think it's just good, kind of shut the world out and go into your own sort of headspace. But you do need to listen to this if you're going to in solitude and don't get distracted by the world. But Talk Talk and their album Spirit of Eden. And this record was originally released in 1988, I believe. There are probably few bands that would have changed as much from their beginnings as did Talk Talk. Ones that come to mind, maybe, I don't know, I suppose Japan is one that changed quite a bit. If you're talking about artists like Scott Walker, changed quite a bit. You would listen to like this late period Talk Talk and go, it sounds nothing like the first one. Their first records were very new wave, very synth heavy, and by the time Color Spring came out in 1986, they had enough money that they could sort of set the tone with EMI, their record label. And EMI basically, after the success of Color Spring, which was interesting because it was a big success everywhere in the world, pretty much except the US, EMI said, well, you can have carte blanche. We'll give you lots of money and do whatever you want. So they kind of got rid of all or most all the synths, brought in a lot of kind of jazz and ambient players. Uh, Apparently, they recorded this album in darkness. They would have a strobe light going in the studio and some other kind of oil lighting. And then players were brought in the dark and put in the dark room and they would say, okay, now improvise something. And those improvisations were basically formed into the piece of music that we have today. And it had such wide ranging reactions to it when it first came out. Everybody from J.D. Considine, who used to write for Rolling Stone. There was some album guide that came out in 1992, apparently, where he gave it a 1-star rating and said they've gone way off the deep end and you can't enjoy them anymore. And then other reviews were giving it 5 stars. And was it 2013? It said the NME had given their list of the 500 greatest albums of all time, and this was number 95 on the list. So this is whether or not you end up liking this album. I would say it's an album you must hear before you die. You probably saw that book, 1,000 Albums You Need to Hear Before You Die. I'm sure this was in there. It's just such a unique album. I love the cover art, by the way. It's done by the same guy that did all of their album art. I can't remember his name right now. This version also features a Blu-ray or a DVD that for some reason, I don't know why, there's some really great Talk B-sides and things that haven't made it to like reissued vinyl, but there's a song called John Cope that's really great that's not on this record. And the album is sort of short in a way, so you kind of hope eventually they do like a deluxe edition of this or a box set of some sort. Maybe if I say it now, maybe it will happen. But it's only got 6 tracks. They're all fairly long. The first track is 9 minutes, and the others are all about 6 minutes long, really. But it's such an interesting album. Mark Hollis, who always had sort of a plaintive sound to his voice, gets very sort of mumble-mouthed on this record to the point that you can't really understand his vocals without reading the lyric sheet, what he's saying. And even then, the lyric sheet was printed in such a way, it was like his handwritten lyrics that they were almost illegible. So thankfully, with the modern edition of being able to look up song lyrics online, it's a little easier to see that stuff now. But the first track, The Rainbow, really sets the mood as like, this is totally something different. You get all of these little harping sort of brass instruments, like muted trumpets and very kind of odd woodwinds. And then these kind of like very slow piano chords with kind of spare percussion. And then his voice kind of weaving through the mix a little bit. And this goes on for long periods of time. There are long periods of silence. I would say this album, more than almost any other, except for maybe David Sylvian, his album Secrets of the Beehive, which came out the year before, and it has similar issues with sort of like being sort of non-commercial and its use of silence and space and the ambience of a room as kind of like music itself. It's very based in like modern sort of like classical music. They've credited everyone as influence on this record, from Miles Davis, John Coltrane, to Debussy and Bartok, even John Cage. So it's kind of got jazzy, almost folk jazzy textures. But The Rainbow sort of opens things up, and it is a long commitment. So you're probably, first time you hear it, you might be like, when is this gonna do something? And that's the point. And then the second track, Eden, has a little bit more sort of like a folk kind of sound, like with a sort of like an English folk, but with a very open-ended kind of like shuffling rhythm track. And then Desire, the last song on side A, is very like soul searchy, again more jazzy, but then the kind of prog rock stuff that comes at the end of that, where Mark gets really like intense. That is not easy listening music by any stretch. And then side B, it's just sort of continues where the first track, Inheritance, is a little bit more um, maybe urgent in a way, but still dark, jazzy. I Believe in You, the next track, is more, that's probably the most, I don't know, accessible song on the record, I would say. I don't know if it really has a tune. And then the last song, Wealth, is, if you like jazz organ, and almost approaches like church organ in a way, like pipe organ, has a very spiritual kind of sound to it without getting churchy. Even though it's got a sort of a church organ, it doesn't have that. It has a religious vibe, but it's more spiritual than sort of like, hey, you're in like church. It's one of those records that I would say not only do you need to hear it before you die, but I'm kind of like, this is sort of an album that I like to be playing like during funereal type of things, or like, you know, it's kind of a reflection of a soul or a life. And the state of the world is kind of sort of the loss of like nature in a lot of ways, the world as it was. There's so many implications in that. And then 3 years later, well, Talk Talk would do another record similar called Laughing Stock. They changed record labels to Polydor, and because they had a battle with EMI a little bit after this sort of tanked. It went to top 20 barely in the UK and no place else. And then, and they never toured, or I'm not sure they played any live shows, but they definitely never toured for this album or anything after that, because the music was basically untourable. It's like, how do you put that in front of an audience? And you'd have to get all these players, and it would have to be a certain way. You hear that with like arguments about the Beatles. There's another band who, so different from the beginning to the end in such a short amount of time. That was what, 8 years? Talk Talk only existed really for like 10 or 11, and it's the same sort of situation. Mark Hollis eventually, he sort of battled some drug issues, and he did one solo record about five years after their last record. Sounded pretty much like another Talk Talk record, and that was it. We never heard from him again, and he's since passed away in his mid 60s, maybe like almost a decade ago now. So it's sort of like he came into the picture and then he just sort of left in a wisp of smoky dust or something, and we unfortunately we didn't get more out of him. He was not the most prolific artist, but the stuff he did was so meaningful and so interesting. So I highly recommend, and again, it's not for everybody, but Talk Talk Spirit of Eden, it's the kind of album that if you kind of open yourself to it, it can be sort of a transcendent record. So while I actually prefer the previous record, Color of Spring, more, just because I think it's got more tunes on it, this one I highly regard too. And I think retrospectively it's been seen as an album that influenced bands like Radiohead and lots of others, sort of helped invent that post-rock genre. There's a fair amount of progressive rock in that music too. So, all right, thank you guys so much. That's enough for my recommends today. And we'll just keep trucking until Christmas. We've got Black Friday Record Store Day coming up soon. That is November 29th. So Friday, the day after sorry, November 28th, the day after Thanksgiving. All right. So well, anyway, whatever Thanksgiving is, it's the next morning at 8 a.m. So don't do too much turkey because you might not wake up from all that tryptophan. So got to get here at like 6:30 to make sure you get most of the stuff you want. So take care. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you again soon. Stay positive. Peace.